over 13% of those below 5 lakh per annum income are now in the higher brackets. Not only this, the report also predicted that middle class average income would jump to 49.7 lakhs by 2047. But since the state of the economy is a matter of a political battle, especially in the run-up to the general elections, a political war has also broken over this report, where Congress has on one side claimed credit for the growth and also nitpicked as far as the data's analysis is concerned. On the other hand, the BJP has alleged that previous UPA government had in fact made India a debt-ridden country, which the 10 years of Modi government have actually cancelled. Just 3 months ago, Morgan Stanley hailed the transformation of India under Narendra Modi government. Recently, the IMF raised India's financial year 2024 GDP growth forecast from 5.9 to 6.1%. ADB has also maintained and retained India's economic growth at 6.4% for the current fiscal year. It's a well-known fact that India is now the 5th largest economy in the world, and the Prime Minister promises to make it the 3rd largest by 2029. The big question then we're asked today is whether under Modi, Indian economy is on the right trajectory, and is it becoming harder and harder to undercut his performance on the economic front of the Modi Sarkar? We'll take those questions to our guest joining us in just a bit. So let's first, of course, break down the highlights of the report. As this report says, the average income of the middle class has now tripled in the last 10 years. This is, of course, the most important data that this report is talking about, because the income has not just increased, not just doubled, but it has tripled. The income is also up, as I mentioned, from 4.4 lakhs in FY13 to 13 lakhs in FY2020. 13.6% have left the lower income strata. They have migrated upwards to various brackets. The big decline in number of zero tax liability is also an important factor, which means that people's income has increased and they are now paying taxes which they otherwise were not paying. Average income is also expected to go up further by 2047, as I mentioned. This is one of India's big targets. The per capita income needs to improve for the large majority of the country, and the average income is set to reach 49.7 lakh by 2047. Let's also take a look at which brackets this improvement has happened, because that will give you an idea of what the upwardly mobile movement is. So up to the 5 lakh mark, now there is a decline of 13.6%. Where have those people gone? Between the 5 to 10 lakh, 8% of those people have moved to this bracket. 10 to 20 lakh, around just shy of 4% of the people have moved to that bracket, so that's not a bad jump. There's 20 to 50 lakh bracket, for which 1.5% of those people have actually moved to that. 50 lakh to 1 crore, expectedly the percentages are low here. There are even some, but a small minority, that have jumped to the 1 crore plus bracket. This report has been hailed by the Prime Minister too, and naturally, as I said, the political war has ensued, because the economy is a major poll issue. So what are the two major parties saying? While the BJP hails the report saying India's overall economy has improved, the Congress has criticized this report saying that this is only focusing on the middle class. What about those who are still struggling? BJP says that India is now the fastest growing economy in the world and has been for a few years. Congress says that the report should have also considered inflation and should have kept that in mind while talking about this tripling of the middle class income. Well, the BJP also says that Congress is raising irrelevant issues. They should just accept the fact that the economy is doing much better than the state that it was left in 2014 to Narendra Modi. And the Congress is saying that actually it is Congress's liberalization policy which is behind this growth. We'll go to the political aspect of it with our guest joining us in just a bit. We also have a special guest lined up. The man behind the SBI report is joining us. Big question is Modinomics on the right trajectory?
पांच साल में 13.5 करोड़ मेरे गरीब भाई बहन गरीबी की जंजीरों को तोड़ करके न्यू मिडिल क्लास के रूप में बाहर आए।
अगर फ्रेजाइल इकोनॉमी टाइप 5 इकोनॉमी में परिवर्तित हुई है। अगर जो है वो पूरी दुनिया के आर्थिक संकट और कंटक को पछाड़ करके भारत जो है वो सबसे तेज़ी से बढ़ती हुई अर्थव्यवस्था साबित हुई है, तो निश्चित तौर से हर व्यक्ति पर इसका असर पड़ेगा, इम्पैक्ट पड़ेगा।
There are very serious reports that real wages, which is real wages of unskilled and skilled laborers, has actually been going down as the kind of growth that we are seeing in the economy is not being reflected both in agriculture and in agricultural labor.
First up, Soumyakanti Ghosh, Group Chief Economic Advisor of the State Bank of India, is joining us. And Mr. Ghosh, I really do appreciate your time. Your report has now been hailed by the Prime Minister as well in a LinkedIn post. How does that make you feel?
Yeah, actually this report is a visualization based on the actual data of income tax in the last 10 years. In fact, if you look into the income tax data, it's basically a repository of wealth of information, and using the data you can actually, we have estimated whatever is said in the report. The most important thing to know that I think there is a lot of misnomers today out in the public domain. The first thing is that you always say 4 to 55% of the Indian population pay taxes. That's actually incorrect. 37% of the total formal labor force today is paying taxes. That is, 1 in every formal labor family is paying taxes. The second thing is that 64% of the income tax returns are actually now below 5 lakh. That means they don't need to pay any taxes. And the third thing is that if you look into the number of taxpayers in the last 10 years, they have expanded from 30 million and this year, as on July 31st, 2023, I think close to 68 million has filed returns. And if you take the late returns also, which is basically filed with fine till 2024 March, this number could actually top 85 million and if not closer to 90 million. So from 30 million to 90 million is a threefold rise in taxpayers. And as you said from the report, that 13.6% of the overall population, overall taxpayers have actually moved into the higher income buckets. I think that is something which means that people are experiencing an increase in their taxable income as of today.
In terms of India's economic revival since 1991, how important is this change of 13+%? Is this the largest such jump that we have witnessed from, let's say, the under 5 lakh per annum bracket to above?
Yeah, first, Shivani, let me also just put in aside some of the misnomers which people may want to say. I think people can always say that we should also look into constant prices. Yes, we should look into constant prices also, but income data is always looked at current prices. So basically, when you are comparing and size of the economy, nominal GDP today and of as of 20 years down the line, you will always compare the size of the economy at current prices. Having said that, also the numbers which are based over here are also based on a very conservative real GDP growth rate of 6.5%. So that's why we're assuming that around 25% of the income tax filers will progress to the upper echelons as on 2047, and the per capita income only will rise to around close to $14,400 or so. Please remember that this assumes a GDP growth rate of only 6.5%, which is lower than today. There is a similar report recently published of RBI which had said that the per capita income could rise beyond 20,000, and even at 14,500 we are ahead of the definition of a developed economy. Now, having said that, I think this 13.6 number is actually a sizable number, and in terms of the progression which we have seen in the last 10 years, I think there indeed has been considerable progress. If I just look into the data, nothing else. The only thing is that in those 2 years, if the pandemic had not happened, this jump would have been even higher. But taking that unforeseen circumstance into side, I think in terms of an progression, I think that's quite a decent progression for an economy which has moved from being 10th to the 5th largest as on 2022 last year.
So you don't think that it's a fair criticism that has come in from some quarters that, you know, this should also be looked at keeping in mind inflation, and inflation is a very hot topic right now?
No, I think, one can always ask that what is in real terms, but if you also make an 2T rule of thumb, using 2T rule of thumb, even if you make and say real times comparison, the income has actually gone up more than twice.
Okay.
So if you can say discount by that factor, but at the end of the day, as I said to you, income is always measured in terms of the at the current prices.
Fair
Because a GDP of a country is at current prices. So I don't see much of the criticism behind that, because at the end of the day, if your income is rising, that is good for you. And of course, if you also look into the inflation numbers for the last 10 years, the average inflation is actually not more than 5.2%. So even
Yes.
if I take 5% inflation, if I discounted that, your income should have more than doubled in the last 10 years. So that also is a matter of achievement by any means.
Okay, the other big issue that people talk about, Mr. Ghosh, is that the middle class in itself is a very undefined body in India. The actual numbers of what is often quoted as being India's middle class could be much less. What, according to you, is the size of our middle class?
See, it's difficult to say, because our study has actually concentrated on the middle income class. I am quoting the term middle income class. There are some studies which talks about the middle income class, size of the middle income class today, that I think by 2047. We have not ventured into that category. Instead, what we have tried to do, we have tried to see the number of tax filers in the economy. If the number of tax filers in the economy, which is currently around 90 million, jumps to around 487 million as on 2047, this itself is a signal that the middle class of India is going, because at the end of the day, our report actually synonymously talks about the middle income class and the middle class in the same way, because the middle class are the people who always pay taxes, honestly files returns, and they are the people who are moving up the ladder. You can define the middle class in terms of an upper middle class, lower middle class, neo middle class, but at the end of the day, these are the people who pay taxes, and the higher is their proportion, the higher, and that's why we have calculated the threshold income, because there are many definitions of which income bucket you should be for the middle class. But as of today, the threshold income of a middle class, or average middle class, is 13 lakhs, meaning that they are earning around 1 lakh rupees in gross terms per month, which was 4.4 lakhs a 10-year back, which was basically around 30 to 35,000 10 years back.
Okay. And I also want to understand from you that some people say that, this growth is not equal. It's very, it's not distributed equally in India. I want to understand from you, just as a pan-India phenomenon, is this growth of people moving above in the IT brackets coming from across the country, or are there some states that are really leading this growth, leaving the others behind?
See, I think the most important aspect of the report, if you have looked into, is that the top 5 states which are where the tax status are coming in, Uttar Pradesh is one of them, West Bengal is one of them, and Rajasthan is one of them, and of course there is Gujarat and Maharashtra. So people actually, there's a lot of people from West Bengal who actually are also migrated to other states and filing taxes. So even in terms of the states, we are seeing a dispersion in terms of the tax returns. So, and another important thing is that even if you do, and we had done a dipstick study even for the last 10 years, which is not a part of the report, in terms of the in terms of the GDP of the states. You'll be surprised to know that if you do an in economic terms, which is we call it a Gini coefficient index, we found that the index actually has narrowed down, meaning that there has been now the gap between the rich states and the states which are actually not so rich are narrowing down over time. So that means that people in these states also are gaining from the economic benefit. And most importantly, after the GST reforms have been introduced, in the last 2 years, given the significant financial development which has happened to the states fiscal position today are much better than one it was earlier. And this is reflected in the data. If the data is in the public domain, states fiscal position are much better. So if I take all that factored into consideration, I think it may be a little bit I mean, it will not be correct to say that there has been a significant jump in inequality. Of course, inequality, when there is growth, there will be inequality. That's an wisdom which happens across every countries. We have seen that how, I mean, even a developed country that also happens. So India cannot be an exception to that.
Okay.
But my sense is that the idea is that how it is narrowing down over time. So in my sense, I think too much should not be read into that. But of course, I mean, there needs to be concerted efforts in terms of reducing the income gap between the rich and the poor.
Absolutely. Well, the outlook is good. At least that's what the numbers say. And states are doing their best. All states are benefiting. And this new middle class or the threshold class is definitely increasing and improving. Samya Ghosh, thanks a lot for joining us and giving us more of your perspective on the data.
Thank you.
Let's also go across to our other guest joining us. Gopal Krishnan Agarwal from the BJP is with us. Sujata Paul of the Congress Party. S.C. Garg is former Finance Secretary with the Government of India. I do thank you for your time. Sujata Paul, you heard the criticism that has come in on the point of inflation. Well, as the expert Mr. Ghosh pointed out that, you cannot do these studies keeping that in mind. But even if you kept that in mind, the average inflation rate over the last 10 years has been 5.5%. And even if you kept the inflation in mind, the income has still doubled, if not tripled. These are still good numbers, and maybe the Congress should come on board to accept it.
I would like to say, just give me a little time, because when we are talking about this, there is some data that I have, and interpretation of the report will be based on that as far as my arguments are concerned. Now, per capita income has been debated time and again on your channel also, and we know that per capita income keeps us at the 139th position out of 193 countries. I'm not even going to talk about inflation, but definitely I'm going to talk about the distribution. And across countries, research has been done in the last 75 years, and it has been found that it's much more easier to move from a lower income group to a higher income group at the lowest level, and that is exactly what your data shows. The
SBI report,
5 lakh is reduced, but from 5 lakh to 5 to 10 lakh, it's 8.13%. But see, what the data is showing is that up to 5 lakh, there has been a decrease. That means when you are saying that more people are filing their returns, the data clearly shows that is not true. Now, there is a middle income trap.
No. The number of people, ma'am, the number of people who are filing their tax returns or are paying tax has increased. These are percentages from those numbers. And in those percentages, the lowest income bracket has come down and they have moved up. But the overall IT returns have increased.
But you have to see what your data is saying, minus 13.6%. So if there were 100, now there are lesser. Some have moved up. But how many have come up?
But ma'am, the absolute number has increased. These are percentages. No. The absolute number has increased, and that's exactly what Mr. Ghosh mentioned. There is a doubling, tripling of those who are paying taxes today.
Shivani, if you keep interrupting...
No, ma'am, this is an important fact. I have to clarify.
Yes,
my intention is not to interrupt.
You do that. But I'm coming to my next point, and the point is that are we going to become a high income country at 2047, or are we going to become a developed nation? That is the question that is being brought up again and again, that we are going to be developed. But the GDP has shown that we might be the 5th largest economy. We might move to the 3rd position, but what it means is something totally different when you compare it to the per capita income.
Okay, fair enough. I think on the per capita issue, I take your point. It has to impact the largest masses, and obviously the per capita income has to improve.
Very important.
There is an
important.
Ma'am, I'll come back to you.
Shivani,
I'll come back to you. Let a couple of my other guests also come in. I'll come back to you. On per capita also, there is a projection that the average or the weighted mean income of the middle class will improve to almost 50 lakhs by 2047. Gopal Krishnan Agarwal, please respond very quickly to the criticisms that are coming in. It's not just about inflation, it's about inequality, it's about the fact that this is the easiest to achieve. Obviously, from the less than 5 lakh per annum bracket to the above ones is the easiest to achieve, but there is miles to go before the government celebrates. Mr. Agarwal, I think, yes, go ahead. Now we can hear you.
We have to understand that data is an outcome of what other economic activities are taking place. If you look into the macroeconomic parameters post-pandemic, you will find that all the macroeconomic parameters on which the economy runs are in a very healthy position. Inflation is under control. GDP growth rate is above around 6.5 to 7%. We are the fastest growing economy in the world. We are attracting the highest FDI in comparison to the global economy. Our capital market index are high. In addition to them, the welfare schemes of the government, because when you see the growth, then the second problem comes is the distribution of income. If you look into the welfare schemes of the Prime Minister Modi ji, it has been very targeted to the lower classes, to the rural areas, to the farmers, to the women, to the poor, etc. Over the 9 years, almost 30 lakh crore have been distributed to the welfare schemes by the government directly into the hands of the people without any leakage. The third important factor that I want to underline is about the infrastructure, ease of living. All the AIMS, hospitals, all these things are in addition. So these are the three factors. Macroeconomic factors are very good, healthy, and it is not being said by us, but the global economy, global institutions are accepting this, that the growth in next 2-3 decades is moving towards India. The distribution mechanism, distribution system is leakage proof, corruption free, and targeted. And the third is infrastructure development, growth, etc. So all the three cumulatively, this report by SBI, we are not only talking that this is an outcome of all the other activities. We have to understand that.
And this is only one of the ways to figure out the progress that is being made. Mind you, this is just basis the IT returns. There are other reports that are also hinting at the economy when various sectors, for example, boosting themselves.
This is in addition to, it underlines the effort of the Narendra Modi government.
Okay. Look at the time you're giving. The time you gave me.
Ma'am, I gave you equal amount of time. Please,
no, you didn't.
I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you. SC Garg, ma'am, I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you. SC Garg is also waiting. Mr. Garg, for you, how do you see the data that has been pushed by the SBI report? Like I said, it's one of the parameters to look at what's happening in the country. Recently, there was another report that from 2 lakh crore debt, the PSBs, the public sector banks, are now making a very, very healthy profit, 178% increase in their profit. That's another way that you can look at the health of the economy, and there are several other parameters. But for you, what stands out as far as this report is concerned? And in your view, is it auguring well for India?
See, I have no doubt about the robustness of the SBI report. They have based the report on the income tax department's data, which is factual. They have also laid out the methodology, how they have computed the numbers, 3.3 lakh versus 13 lakhs. I think that shouldn't be disputed on facts. But what the conclusions we draw, I think we should be careful about that. So let me just say the broad, big conclusion which has been drawn. The conclusion is that in 13-14, this was 3.3 lakh per capita or per person income tax filer. Today it's about 13 lakhs, so three times the income has increased. If you look at the GDP at current prices, and Mr. Ghosh was also speaking only in terms of current prices, the income tax data also reflects the current prices. India's GDP in current prices in 2013-14, the comparable year was 114 lakh crores. Today, for 2022-23, the GDP in current prices is about 270 lakh crores. So the GDP in current prices have gone up by roughly about 2.7% or 2.6 times. So if the per capita income reflected in the income tax returns is about 3 times, and the GDP at current prices have grown by about 2.6 times, there is no miraculous increase in the movement of people in terms of their income tax or their wealth or their incomes. I think that conclusion should not be drawn, that this indicates something special.
No, absolutely. You're right about that. I think, like some of our panelists also mentioned, it has to be seen in conjunction with what other is happening. In fact, the fact that the GDP has risen by almost 3%, 3 times as you're mentioning, and the movement of the people from the lowest strata is also 3 times, the income increase is also 3 times, it correlates in that sense. But the issue is whether the policies are helping the people come out of the lowest bracket. That's the question.
Shivani,
You want me to respond?
Yes, Mr. Garg first. I'll go to our political panelists after that.
Now, then you get into the policies that, see, the income increases basically by people's getting better jobs, better incomes, etc. And in that, the government policies may or may not help. There are a certain kind of policies which have been pursued by the government. There have been numerous programs for the personal facilities and assets creation, whether you take toilets, houses, electricity, fuel, gas, etc., which have benefited people quite a lot. There have been also programs like capital expenditures expanded in last couple of years, which have also led to the income of the people.
Okay.
But then at the same time, if you look at the distribution, and that is where it hides. I think the income tax data indicating that the lower income bracket, there is a reduction, actually shows that the lowest bracket, because the inflationary pressures and the lowest threshold in the income tax not having been raised as much as 3 times in the last 9 years or so, there is a movement away from the lowest bracket to the next bracket. That should not be read. And when the report says that only 37% of the Indian working class file the return, it also says that 63% don't do it.
Yeah, so that's a reality, of course.
63% of the wage earners, and it's not the people who are of the working age. If you take it from the working age, it's much larger. 7 crores out of 70 crores is only 10%.
Absolutely. No, on that I take your point. Those, of course, are the realities. But of course, the number of people who have also been who have come into the tax bracket has also increased, as Mr. Ghosh mentioned. Yes, Sujata Paul, please come in.
Yes. You know, the fact is that 63% people have not filed returns. I'm not going to go into details because the panelist has already mentioned it. However, in the July 2023 RBI bulletin, they have mentioned that in the next 25 years, we should have a growth of 7.6%, 25 years. Only then will we achieve what is mentioned now. However, if you look at the data, you will find that 7.6% growth has been recorded only 7 times since the 1991 reforms, and we could not ever sustain it for more than 2 consecutive years. Now, when you're talking about this average mean or the weighted mean, what does it mean? You are trying to give us not data but manipulated data. And why do I say? Because the lowest income group is not being considered properly in this report, and those people who paid income tax earlier but have filed 0 tax returns because they have lost their jobs or their incomes have reduced, that should have also been taken into account.
I take that point, but I think maybe manipulated data might be too, uncharitable an attack to make. The SBI produces some of the finest reports on Indian economy, and let's give them their due respect. But yes, Gopal Krishna Agarwal, please respond to that, because I think fundamentally the issue remains that there is a large class that still needs to be uplifted. The distribution has to be equal, and the per capita income is the real measure by which you can assess the living standards of the public.
So, Shivani, we have to understand that BJP or our government at any point of time is not saying that our work has been accomplished. The Indian economy is at the topmost gear. the thing is, we are moving in the right direction. That has to be accepted, and that is underlined here. Second point is when the Prime Minister is, it is not, we are never saying it problems about the distribution of the income is not there. Definitely there is disparity of income. Definitely there are challenges about the employment. There are definitely challenges about the fiscal deficit or the debt to GDP. All problems have not been completed. But as we acknowledge the challenges in the economy, we want the opposition to acknowledge that the direction of the growth is at a fast pace, is in the right direction. The economy, global economy's action points have moved to the India's image in the global economy, and its inclusion into the regional and global supply chain is very fast. The areas like computer, software, artificial intelligence, technology-driven fintech, where the growth moves.
Fair enough. Can I take your point to Sujata Paul?
The thing is, 2 days back, Shivani, let me complete.
Okay, very quickly. Sujata Paul, 1 second, please don't interrupt. Sujata Paul, let's not do crosstalk. Let him finish. I'll come.
Cabinet has approved such a good scheme for artisans. Ultimately, entrepreneurship, small artisans, about 18 categories of artisans will be supported with the toolkits, with the support, with the financial support. So at one point of time, fintech is increasing, industrial manufacturing growth is increasing. IIP figures gave that the purchase managers index.
Okay, sir, I know there are numbers you can rattle, but let's just focus on the numbers that we are discussing today, because we will be out of time. I take your point. Sujata Paul, it may be too much for the BJP to expect that the opposition will praise their work. That's not the job of the opposition. But as an opposition, you also have to be reasonable in your criticism. Then only people will also listen to the criticism you're offering. If you just say that, India is doomed and there is nothing good happening in the country, that also will not be taken at face value.
And they should
Shivani, I have not made any negative statement. I have only, can I speak, Mr. Agarwal?
Sujata Paul, very quickly, please.
I have not been negative, Shivani. I have only given an analysis of the data as I see it. And I am also going to say that Mr. Agarwal should tell us 80 crore people who got free ration, did all of them file returns in the lowest bracket? So the lowest bracket should have increased, right? Up to 5 lakhs at least, that should have happened. The zero returns, how many people filed? Did you tell us? No. But the economy after COVID saw a particular quarter where there was a shrinkage of 23%. So from there, rising upward was also growth. And I agree to that completely. But what you have done is, you have taken a particular denominator of people in the middle class who grew at a mean average, and you've added the word weighted to that. And that is where the manipulation has come. That is what I was saying.
No, you cannot say the data is manipulated.
Yeah.
You may analyze, your analysis can be at a different, statistics have to be analyzed in all the way. When the Prime Minister from the rampant of the Red Fort said that more than 13.5 crore people have come out of poverty, does it not in absolute figure, relative figures are there, the income of the middle class is increasing, the welfare for the poor people is increasing. So all round growth is there.
Why are you giving 80 crore people free rations, Mr. Agarwal?
The tax
Answer my question.
Corporate tax collection has increased.
You're not answering my question. I'm asking you, why are you giving free ration to 80 crore people? Are they filing returns? Have they filed zero returns? You're not mentioning how many people are filing zero returns. And a weighted mean average will not give the data correctly, because you're considering, and again, there is inequality here. No, Mr. Agarwal, you have to reduce inequality, bring in more education.
Can I come in? As far as those who don't file tax, I think that's a number that can be estimated in India. So Sujata Paul, let's not hammer on that point, because when we know how many are filing returns, we know how many are not filing returns also. And our expert also pointed out that even from the working population, only 1/3 is filing returns. But can I just mention what the report says? Sir, 1 second. What the report says is, what are the reasons behind these? Sir, 1 second, please. What are the reasons behind this transition from the lower income to the other income? One is the buoyancy in the number of tax filers itself, who were earlier not reporting the income. And if the cases of non-reporting and under-reporting of income can be controlled, there will be another significant jump in the weighted mean income of the ITR filers. So it's not just the fact that income is increasing, the fact that more people are filing returns, and there is still, of course, estimation that this is under-reported. Then obviously we'll get a more correct data point of view. But what do we have to look forward to? 2047, we're talking about 49 lakhs plus average income for the middle class. We are told that the RBI's estimate are even higher than that. So the SBI estimates are actually on the conservative side. The hope of every Indian is that we continue on this trajectory and we can achieve those goals, political battles aside. I have to leave it on that note. I do thank all of our guests for joining us for our top debate. Time for a very short break. On the other side, we'll get you how Yasin Malik's wife has been inducted in Pakistan's caretaker government cabinet, and she's going to be in charge of human rights, if you can believe it.
Our planning when it comes to India, the intel suggests that this was a strategic appointment as far as the caretaker cabinet in Pakistan is concerned, and that's why the appointment of Mushal Malik becomes important. Two important points: her close association with the Pakistan Army and the ISI. My colleague Anand Narasimhan is with us. Yes, Anand.
Well, Mushal Malik herself is educated at the London School of Economics. She is a bright person herself, no questions asked. But her connections with Yasin Malik and her actions, that's what turns the spotlight. If the JKLF has rushed to issue a statement against Mushal saying that she's got nothing to do with Yasin Malik, then we should know that she's got everything to do with him. They have a daughter. They got married in 2009. They have a daughter, and mind you, the daughter also spoke in the POK assembly against India. So this is a narrative that's being pushed, as our group editor security Manoj Gupta is getting us the details. This is one last desperate bid by the ISI to try and steer the narrative and to try and rake up this entire Kashmir issue once again. A dead horse which they're trying to flog again and again and again, and this is a desperate measure. What are they trying to do ahead of the G20 summit in India, and more importantly the UNGA in September? They are trying to give Mushal Malik an official position under human rights to go and talk and raise this issue. But the fact is that she is taking charge, or she's been given charge under a caretaker government which itself is a puppet in the hands of the military establishment. So clearly it's a military driven narrative or a deep state driven narrative, an ISI driven narrative, and at a time when churches are being attacked in Faisalabad and temples are being destroyed in Karachi. So what human rights is she going to stand up for and talk about? So people who live in glass houses cannot throw stones at others at all. In this case, Pakistan has such a sorry record, one wonders what Mrs. Malik is going to defend. The other fact is that her own husband, she's not said a single word against him. Once he finds himself convicted on acts of secession and also aiding and abetting terrorism, he's still charged for being involved. And that's the alleged involvement in the killing of 4 IAF officers on Indian soil, and that too in cold blood, where scores others were injured. He's also charged with the kidnapping of the daughter of a former Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir and the sister of a former Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir. So those cases are still on, and she has till date never opened her mouth against or said a single word against Yasin Malik, who finds himself incarcerated in a jail in India after being convicted properly by the courts. He is serving life imprisonment, and he has not contested those charges, or neither has he contested the sentencing. So these aspects remain. So ISI may have thought that they've got a trump card, but it may just boomerang. As far as the Indian sources are concerned, India says that Kashmir is a dead issue. The G20 in Srinagar, and 4 years later, after the abrogation of 370, as Jammu and Kashmir is fast on the path of even having assembly level elections there as a union territory very, very soon in the next year or so, then we know how far we have progressed as far as Jammu and Kashmir is concerned. And this K narrative or Kashmir narrative and flogging this dead horse is not going to yield any results. It may just prove to be counterproductive. In fact, what sources within intel sources in India are saying is it's a reflection that the terrorist activities and fomenting terrorism on Indian soil has the blessings even of the caretaker PMO. The Prime Minister's office has these blessings and they are all in cahoots. So non-state actors, that entire aspect itself gets demolished with the appointment of Mrs. Malik as part of the special team of the caretaker Prime Minister. All these appointments are done by the military deep state. Now until February, till there are elections in Pakistan, it's the military deep state and the military establishment that is quasi running affairs in Pakistan. And if these are their priorities, one only knows what their intent is and what their intentions are. So this is also a message to the Indian polity that there cannot be any talking peace with Pakistan.
Right, and Anand, if we specifically talk about an association with the ISI, this essentially is also being looked at as Pakistan Prime Minister's office bid to save ISI from being irrelevant or completely non-performing. How does one associate these two aspects when it is about the appointment of Mushal Malik?
Well, the ISI has had a string of failures. First up, they had no clue that 370 is being abrogated and they couldn't do anything. Over the last 4 years, whatever they have tried has failed. They are losing any kind of support on ground because that narrative has failed. So much so in Pak-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, all the way up to Baltistan and Gilgit, all those regions, there are people who are turning around and saying, we are better off with India, we don't want you anymore. And the atrocities, the entire coinage of ye jo dehshatgardi hai, iske piche vardi hai, has been coined in POJK itself, and it's aimed at the Pakistan military establishment. So it's a slew of setbacks for the ISI to the level to which that the Arab nations, the Islamic nations, and the erstwhile ally America, they have all turned their backs and saying this is all a dead thing and you have been proven ineffective. So for the ISI, this is very bad PR. So this is one last desperate attempt to try and get some currency. They are hoping that Mushal Malik could go there and perhaps raise some funds for them for their so-called jihad, and also raise funds from nations who may find certain empathy, or she may be able to evoke certain amount of empathy or sympathy from them. But again, the Indian side or the intel sources here believe it's a lost cause. It's not going to put any more on that. They have actually stamped their approval.
Thanks a lot for staying with us. In yet another bid to provoke India, Pakistan has now appointed jailed separatist Yasin Malik's wife, Mushal Malik, as part of its caretaker Prime Minister Anwarul Haq Kakkar's cabinet. Mushal Malik will be special assistant to the Prime Minister and, if you can believe it, on human rights in this caretaker cabinet. It is important to know that Yasin Malik was arrested in early 2019 in connection with a 2017 terror funding case registered by the NIA. In May last year, he was convicted by a Delhi court in a terror funding case and was sentenced to life imprisonment. He is also accused of terrorism, inciting violent activities that disturbed the valley in 2017. Pakistan's caretaker Prime Minister has appointed this new cabinet ahead of the national elections, which are due in November. Earlier on August 9, Pakistan's National Assembly was dissolved, ending the tenure of the previous government. But here's why India is not too happy, or not going to be too happy with this, because this is a clear indication that Pakistan wants to spite India, or at least provoke India on the issue of Jammu and Kashmir. So remember, Mushal has been inducted at a time when Jammu and Kashmir is witnessing a new era of peace. Last year, husband Yasin was convicted for terror charges. Her appointment is also coming at a time when in Pakistan is looking to send a message to those in India that we will continue to support terrorism. They're not mending their ways. This is also a message and a bid to continue to attract separatist voices from the valley towards itself, that is Pakistan. Mushal's induction also comes just days after Jammu and Kashmir reopened the probe in Justice Neelkant Ganju's murder case, remember, where her husband Yasin Malik is the prime accused. So the big debate that's coming up with Yasin's wife in Pak cabinet, is it not a farce on human rights given the track record of her husband in India?
I think
एक कंट्राडिक्शन है। एक तरफ से अगर वो ह्यूमन राइट्स के लिए कंसर्न है, दूसरी तरफ से उस शख्स को इस जगह पर तैनात करते हैं जिसके हस्बैंड मिलिटेंसी में इन्वॉल्वड हैं।
भैया, पाकिस्तान का मामला है, पाकिस्तान जो करना चाहे उसके लिए मुझे क्या कहना है। वो हम दो मुल्कों की बात है, आप तो गुजारिश करते हैं, उनकी बात है।
एक जम्मू कश्मीर के लोगों को ये ख्याल था कि पार्लियामेंट एक इंस्टीट्यूशन है, उससे हमें इंसाफ मिलेगा, उसमें तो बेड़ा गर्क हो गया। तो आप पाकिस्तान की बात क्यों कर रहे हैं? अपने यहाँ के मुल्क की बात कर लीजिए ना।
Let's go across to the guest joining us. Lalit Ambadar is a noted Kashmiri Pandit activist. Dr. Tara Karta is former director, NSCS. And Jahangir Ali is also a journalist joining us. Lalit, let me begin with you. You look at the reactions that have come in from the Kashmir-based parties today. Either they're not very willing to speak on the subject, or they're saying, forget Pakistan, let's talk about India. But these are the very same parties that continue to ask India to talk to Pakistan. Yes. If you're so interested in talking to Pakistan, you have to hold Pakistan accountable too, right? To create the atmosphere for those talks. They never do that.
See, I'm not surprised, neither on the account that this woman has been the wife of a warlord. He's not just only, I wanted to check the Apni party representative who said militancy. No, this is terrorism. Kashmir Jihad is terror infested, pan-Islamism inspired, and this is what Yasin Malik is one of those guys who founded Pakistan's anti-India Kashmir Jihad in Kashmir. Number two, Pakistan has never come down on his statement, on his agenda on Kashmir. Remember, first thing after 14th of August, when Pakistan was born over dead bodies after bloody partition, what did they do? They started a war. A country, they claimed they had nothing to start off with. They started a war on Kashmir. That was the Kashmir Jihad War 1. Number two, every successive person in the establishment of Pakistan, be it a general or be it a so-called, elected representative, they always maintained Kashmir Hamari Shahrag hai. It's our windpipe. It's our source of life. So they have not changed. They are continuing with the same process. It's us we are getting surprised. Number two, when Farooq Abdullah, Mehbooba Mufti, they are the stooges of Pakistan operating on the soil of India. They're Islamists. They never speak a word against Pakistan. Have you ever heard them speak a word against Pakistan? But all the time, as you rightly pointed out, they want us to speak to Pakistan. Can you imagine this? All their polity, Islamic polity is about what? We create distance, more distance between Delhi and Srinagar, but I'm closer to Rawalpindi because Pakistan said Risha kya la. That's not again not surprise.
No, but it really,
and I'm awaiting the left liberal apologists coming on the forefront because they are the ones who enabled political makeover of Kashmir Jihad, the founder Yasin Malik, the man who should have been hanged.
Lalit, you have high expectations. You have high expectations. Let's not forget that Yasin Malik met India's sitting Prime Minister at one time, despite accepting that he killed Air Force pilots and accepted that he killed Justice Ganju.
I have disrupted almost all the meetings that were held in Delhi where Yasin Malik especially was there. He was treated as the head of a state. He was, and not only the ordinary NGOs or people were holding him as the chief guest. Even the media companies, media office, media houses.
Yeah, I mean, we know about that. We know about that. That past of some of the people in India. Lalit, it's best we don't spend on much time on that because times have changed, and that is what is hurting Pakistan today. Jahangir Ali, I want to come to you before I go to Tara Karta for her expert opinion on this. There is a problem when in Kashmir somebody like Yasin Malik continues to be held in high regard. And the fact that, even today, political parties are uncomfortable with calling out what he's responsible for. Till you at least accept what he's responsible for, denounce him, there cannot be an acceptance of what the Kashmiri demands or voices may say. Because killing of innocents is not something that can be condoned for any reason. But our political class, it shies away from that.
Yeah, thank you, Shivani, for having me on the show. First and foremost, I think the political parties in Kashmir are not the spokespersons of Yasin Malik. There are people in Kashmir who have been associated with his party, and I'm sure they'll put up a defense of what he has done and what he has not done. And second thing is, I wanted to point out that India and Pakistan both are very notorious for having people who are convicted criminals in positions of power. You will see this not only in India but also in Pakistan and many other some of our neighboring countries in South Asia. This is a problem that we need to tackle.
But one second, Jahangir, I didn't want to interrupt you, but if you're comparing Yasin Malik with someone who's in a position of power after being convicted of terror, please remind me of who is this person.
There are many. I can cite you many instances where take the case of Sadhvi Pragya also.
Sadhvi Pragya is not a convict.
She is someone who has been convicted. Take the instances of your UP's Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath.
No. Jahangir, you are confusing accused with convict.
There are dozens of instances which I can cite to show you that people who have
they are not convicted, Jahangir. Let's talk on facts. I'll let you speak, but I cannot allow you to just mouth absolute inanities. Then people you're talking about, you can have, one second, Jahangir, I'll give you appropriate time. The people you're talking about, you can have your differences about them being elected, not elected. I am not questioning that. But please, let's not confuse them with convicted terrorists. And we are not discussing Yasin Malik being appointed. We are discussing his wife being appointed in Pakistan.
Somebody killing someone in the name, in some other name is not terrorism. Are you trying to tell
No, I am just trying to say that there is a justice system. Yasin Malik, it took 20 years plus for him to be convicted. Okay? You have to respect that process.
That is a comment.
And an accused and a convict cannot be put on the same plane, regardless of what the politics may be. An accused and a convict are not the same thing. Jahangir, you're a journalist. I don't think I need to drive down the point that an accused and a convict are not the same thing. But you can continue with the rest of your point.
But the charges against both the people are same, na? If somebody take as per your what you are saying is that Yasin Malik has been involved in the killing of Kashmiri Pandits. Fine. The charges against him are the same as murder. As somebody who has been involved in lynching someone, or somebody who has conspired in lynching of someone. In both the cases, charges of murder apply. So what I was trying to make a point is that the politics in both India and Pakistan is very dirty. We should as media persons, you also have a responsibility that we should always propagate politics which is clean, and our system should not be influenced or packed with people who have been convicted criminals.
No. So one second. Again, you're confusing the issue.
Internal issue.
Jahangir Ali, you're confusing the issue.
Politicians in Pakistan or
Miss Malik is not a convict, and we have to obviously make that statement. So it's not the issue about who has been appointed. It's obviously her association with Yasin Malik that is the issue here today. It's not her appointment per se, but the messaging of Pakistan. And why is it that those in India who speak for Pakistan, who bat for Pakistan at every turn, often over and above Indian interests, why is it that they are not calling out Pakistan's provocation today? Dr. Darakarta, I want to come to you. What is the message that Pakistan is trying to send? And do you see some correlation in what has transpired in India and in Jammu and Kashmir over the last few years and months, and this move being made by Pakistan government? Dr. Karta, could you hear me? That was for you.
Yeah, I can. That was directed to me. Okay. See, this whole cabinet is basically the Chief Asim Munir's dream cabinet. This is his statement to say how strong he is. You know, which is what he's been trying to show with his arrests, with his large-scale detention. I mean, the things that this government has done is unbelievable. It's unbelievable even for Pakistan, which has a record of doing such things. So this is the General Munir making a statement that he has control on everything. So that is what he's got this girl onto the cabinet. I mean, even if you see the rest of the cabinet, it's pretty much in the same thing.
And
Can
the
you
fact
hear me?
that she's going to be the human rights care,
Exactly.
whatever associate of the Prime Minister on human rights issue, that certainly is another message that is being sent to India, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, at some level, it's a little humorous, and I honestly don't see the connection between Yasin Malik and a criminal or somebody who's been accused of XYZ. Yasin Malik has even kidnapped a daughter of a minister. He's done the kind of things this man has done would have earned him a title of a terror king anywhere.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter that he has 20 years, he's kept quiet. That's a different issue. But this is the point is what message is Pakistan trying to send? That is the point. It is not whether Yasin Malik, what he's done, what not. I mean, and also, Shivani, if you look at that whole, the cabinet, everything, all the major portfolios are with the Prime Minister. And we know the Prime Minister is an absolute controlled ISI, or let's say not ISI, establishment man. That he's been that from the 1990s. And the entire national security, everything is under the Prime Minister.
Right.
The people who've been selected, for example, you have Lieutenant General who has been elected for what he is an ex-army people are there. He was an ex-PTI. He was head of the Naya Pakistan Housing Authority. So there is also an attempt to sort out PTI, get their agreeable people on board.
Yes.
And I have a sense this cabinet is going to last for some time.
Okay.
Because this is the general's dream cabinet. So
All right.
you're going to deal with Mrs. Malik for some time.
Well, frankly, it wouldn't matter much to us beyond the point. But I think, Lalit Ahmada, the point is, and why we are discussing it is, that people need to wake up. And I know those who are pretending to sleep, you can't wake them up. But this is what Pakistan stands for. It doesn't want normalization of relationship with India. If it did, it could mend its ways. Instead, what it wants to do is fan the pro-separatist narrative in Jammu and Kashmir, especially looking at it how it's sinking over the last few years, and continue to excite those elements in India by doing these shenanigans. Lalit, I have a minute left. Yes.
There are two things I can relate to what this move is all about. Number one, Pakistan is on the verge of implosion. The only thing that can keep Pakistanis together is Islamism, in the name of Islam. And Kashmir is something that binds them all together in the name of Islamism. Let me tell you, this Ghazwa-e-Hind war began thousands ago with the capture of Sindh. And 1947, when Pakistan was created, it was the biggest achievement of this Kashmir Jihad, this Ghazwa-e-Hind. And Kashmir Jihad is the next on their target. Their eyes are on the Lal Qila in Delhi. Kashmir is not a mere passage to reach Delhi. Right. Number two, they are giving a message. They are giving a message to their stooges in Kashmir. Look, we haven't abandoned you, we are with you.
Yes, exactly.
And I will not be surprised. I will not be surprised in coming days. You will see some more terror activities happening in Kashmir, and also coming on a day when Christian churches and houses are being burnt in Lahore. And that day, this woman is being appointed as an advisor on human rights. Hindus and Sikhs have diminished to 2% or 25% in same Islamic Republic of Pakistan. And this lady is going to be talking only about Kashmir. And I think we need to build a narrative. This Kashmir Jihad has been, Kashmiri Hindus have been the worst victims of Kashmir Jihad. You are talking human rights.
Right.
This government has to officially acknowledge what Kashmiri Hindus suffered was genocide, put up a tribunal and investigate everybody. Those who are actually responsible, like Yasin Malik, should be sent to gallows, and also investigate their partners in the so-called mainstream politics.
Some of those cases
what was their role
have
in
been
promoting
reopened.
this Islamism in Kashmir?
Some of those cases have also been reopened much belatedly, but we know the ecosystem that existed at one time and the denial of the problem in Kashmir that existed in one time. It takes a little bit of time. It's been a 30-40-year problem, and possibly will take more time to sort through this. But I do thank.
Comment?
I have maybe 15 seconds, Jahangir Ali.
I think this cabinet that has been formed in Pakistan has become a butt of jokes in Pakistan itself. And I also think that India is a very vast country to feel offended by such kind of maneuvers by Pakistan.
Okay. I have to leave it at that.
Rather than taking we are only trying to understand.
I have to leave it at that, but I think the messaging is what we can and should discuss, because the messaging is to continue to promote separatist tendency in Jammu and Kashmir. But I do thank and take all of your views. I thank you for joining us. We're leaving you with an unusual solution to combat increasing incidents of suicides in Rajasthan's entrance exams coaching hub, Kota, where spring-loaded fans are now being installed in all hostels and paying guest accommodations to reduce the suicide cases among students. Will it be the only thing that is required? We leave that question, and I take your leave.
लागू हुई है पेनगी डिवाइस लगाने के लिए हॉस्टल जो हमारे क्षेत्र में आते हैं कोटा क्षेत्र में उसकी तो हम लोग गाइडलाइन की पालना 90 से 95% हम लोग करवा चुके हैं और इसको लगवा भी चुके हैं इसको
Namaste, Jai Hind, and welcome to this edition of The Right Stand. There was a time, ladies and gentlemen, when poverty lines were lowered to uplift people from poverty. And there is a time now where the State Bank of India report says that incomes have tripled in the last 9 or 10 years. And so many more people have come above the poverty line. 13.5 crore was the number Prime Minister Narendra Modi said from the ramparts of the Red Fort. But the rise of India